Hi there, this is Steve Spurrier. You can join University of Florida Hall of Famer Shane Matthews and also the two-time SEC Player of the Year every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about the Florida Gators, including news, analysis, opinions, and some of the biggest names in sports. You can find him on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Or you can watch him live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter.
Good morning. Welcome to a Friday edition of the program, Podup with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. We got JC, second part of today's show, Seth Harp. He'll be joined by Zac Blobner, who is from does his own radio show down in Tampa Bay. If you missed it last night in the XFL, JC's team, St. Louis, somehow wins again on the last second field goal. They play horrible and find a way to win the game. JC, you're on the Titan in my heart line.
Yeah.
What hat are we wearing today? NC State, did they beat somebody last night?
No, they didn't play. They're playing Saturday against Clemson. I just like this. I like the team. I think it's going to be a sleeper in the tournament. Now, I could be wrong about that. But I got to pick somebody out of the ACC, and it's certainly not North Carolina, if you can believe that, right? I mean, where's North Carolina going? And
well, you loved them. You picked them at the beginning of the year to win it all. You don't remember that, do you?
I thought you mean I didn't pick them?
No, you picked the North Carolina Tar Heels to win it all.
I don't think I did that, but whatever.
Because they were number one. They were number one in America. That's why you picked them.
Well, I don't remember, but anyway, I like the Wolfpack. I always have. Those three schools: Duke, North Carolina, NC State. NC State's always been the somewhat of the stepchild in that triangle, so I root for them. Yeah, I like them.
Yeah. So in golf, out down at the Honda Classic.
How about that?
I believe Billy Horschel played pretty well.
Yeah, that's right. My pick is Billy, and I got Sungjae. Your pick, however, is Cameron Young.
Cameron Young's one back.
Second. He's second. How are we so great at golf picks? What makes us so good at that, QB? I mean, you got to admit,
it's called luck.
Well, I don't know, dude. We've picked 4 winners. I think you picked 2 or 3. I picked 1.
I have Shane Lowry's only 3 back. So there you have it.
I think we've picked a couple of tournament winners so far this year, dude. Both of us have picked a winner. That's pretty good when you think about it. When you only get 3 players out of the field and you pick the winner, think about that, dude. Think about the money you could win.
Yeah, that is true. All right,
odds are huge in golf.
So what's crazy is college basketball is winding down. It's almost time for conference tournaments. Hard to believe.
Can't wait for that.
Gators, obviously, we're not going to make the tournament unless they win the entire deal in Nashville. But it's crazy. It's crazy how fast it moves. Yeah. And before you know it, the Masters will be here. And speaking of the Masters, JC, I saw this yesterday on Twitter or somewhere, and I screenshot it because I've never seen this before. And I thought it was interesting. Did you know that you can buy they call it the Masters food kit or something like that, and it costs like $175, and it serves up to 14 guests. And what you do is they send you little containers of the egg salad, containers of the pimento cheese.
Sure.
You get potato chips, you get cookies, you get souvenir cups, but it's just it's a kit that if you're watching, I may order it because I love their food there. Now, I feel like it's overpriced on this little thing that you can order. Yes. When it's there, it's like $1.50.
That's right.
But,
that's right.
I thought that was interesting.
How many times have you been to Augusta, QB? I think I've been 3 or 4.
I've been twice, but every time I went, I was there all 4 days. For the tournament.
Okay, so you've been there the whole time. You know, it seems to coincide, or it has in the past, with the Final Four, and the championship game seems to be always on the Monday practice round, the championship game of basketball. And I don't know how many times, but it seemed like both times I went, we, after golf, went to some place to watch the final game. And that was just a great experience. I don't know. I haven't been to Augusta in probably 15 years or so. So I don't know what it's like now in terms of, has it gotten bigger? Is there more capacity for fans and so forth? But I've heard that more people are attending these days because tickets seem to be a little bit more available, whether it be through the lottery or third party. And I just remember when the practice rounds weren't nearly as crowded as the actual competitive rounds, but the practice rounds seemed to be just as popular for fans, just to see it and be there. So that's when I went during the practice rounds. I actually saw the final round when Tiger beat Chris DeMarco in the final group, and Chris almost chipped in on 18. I was there for that, and I just think if anybody gets a chance, if you ever get a chance to go, you have to scratch it off the list, because you've got to see that place to believe it. It's so different than what you see on television. It doesn't do it justice on TV. We've said this before.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Gator baseball cranks up a series this weekend. JC, you can go out and watch them. The Bearcats are rolling into town.
Yeah, the Bearcats. The other night, though, they played South Florida, and they were ahead.
JC, it's a midweek game. They ain't going to throw their – they gave up like 6 runs in the ninth. And
well, I mean, what about our bullpen there? Is that a concern at all?
Okay, no, because as Sully said, if you pay attention –
I didn't.
It's like the first week of the season, and the previous night the closers pitched, which I've never understood all that, but he's going to protect guys' arms.
Yeah,
I mean, because when I was growing up, I pitched a little in Little League. I never pitched in high school, but I'd be damned if I didn't pitch like every freaking Little League baseball game. So but they don't do that anymore. They have a program, how many pitches, how much rest. They don't want to damage these kids' arms. So that's your update on that.
What you're saying is there are no more Nolan Ryans in the world?
No, well, I mean, you just don't see guys. They're going to protect people's arms regardless. Okay. Softball is softball is 10-0. They've won, I think, 7 games with the run rule.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth Hightower, I believe her ERA is 0.00. Now, wow. They're getting ready. They play some good squads this weekend out in California at a tournament. So,
that's right.
But Tim's got a squad now. They are pretty damn good.
I just want them to compete for a championship against Oklahoma. I know that's asking a lot, and Oklahoma is the dynasty. But man, what are we talking about? If you can't win it, what's the big deal? I think he may have something here. We'll see how they come out of California before I start, crowning them SEC champions.
Well, they're going to go to Oklahoma City. They may not win the conference, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Basketball. Who does basketball play tomorrow?
They got to play. They got to play Vanderbilt, and it's just too bad. They fought hard against Kentucky. You got to credit them for staying in it, not tanking on the season right now. And it's really hard to rally. You're 14-14 at this point, and you're just hoping to get an invitation to the NIT. That's what I think is more realistic. I don't even know if that's realistic, QB. So, when you lose your top scorer, that's pretty much the nail, if you ask me. I know they're playing hard. I understand that. Kentucky's not that great. They're good, but they're not going to win it this year either. I don't know. I just don't see much of a remaining season for this group. And he'll get some better players.
They'll be in the NIT for sure.
You think so? What if they have a losing record, QB?
I don't think they will. You can still go in the NIT and have a losing record.
Well, it's a national invitation tournament, so I think 14-14. QB, you going to invite a sub 500 team in there?
Well, hell, they do it for bowl games.
They do. That's true.
So, if you missed it in the last couple of weeks, Gators have lost 3 assistant coaches to the National Football League. Kerry Colbert is joining Sean Payton in Denver. He played for the Broncos as well. So, and then Patrick Toney and William Pegler, I can't pronounce his name, they're going to the Cardinals. Does not surprise me. You're going to see this more and more in college football. It's going to be hard to keep. If anybody gets an opportunity, they're gone, I'm telling you. And they'll take a pay cut because nobody wants to deal with the NIL and all that nonsense. It's just the way of the world.
Whether they want to or not, you're right. It's the way of the world.
So I'm saying. So that's why
you either adapt to it or you just fold. I mean, you can do
No,
it.
it's not adapting, JC. It's a way of life. It's
That's what I
already
mean.
extremely hard to coach and recruit. It's almost it's just wearing on people that you have to do it 24 hours a day, every day of the year now, and have to recruit your own team. Whereas in the past, you did not have to do that. And it's just, I don't blame them one bit. I do blame them because I can tell you right now, like I said, I've talked to multiple college coaches across the country at Power Fives and at Division Twos in between. And
Yeah.
they're like, the sport is not like it used to be. And if you get an opportunity, you are gone. You are gone. So wish those guys a lot of luck. It goes to show you that Billy Napier has good dudes on his staff, and he's bringing in a defensive coordinator that very young guy.
Alabama's linebacker coach.
Yeah, he was at Southern Miss last year as defensive coordinator. So we'll see. But it's a shame what's happening in college.
He was at Southern Miss last year, or was it Alabama last year?
I'm pretty sure he was at Southern Miss last year. I could be wrong, but
no, I think he was
there. Well, we'll look it up.
It doesn't make any real difference.
Well, it is. We don't want to give away false information on this program.
Well, I swear I thought he was Alabama's linebacker coach, but I do know.
Well, because they hired him as a linebacker coach, but then he hasn't even coached there. I could be wrong too. Do you even know his name? It's
Armstrong.
Austin Armstrong.
Yeah,
I'm looking it up right now on live television.
Live television. Well, we're recording, QB. So.
Yeah, we are. So I'm trying to look up his
Austin Armstrong. Yeah, linebacker coach, I thought.
Well, he was the linebackers coach, but he was the defensive coordinator. And usually they have a thing here that says
I can help look for it too, because I want to know also. I want to know. Yeah.
Well, we are still looking it up.
Pull up on your Florida.
I have it right here, but it does tell me when he was hired at Alabama. Usually it tells you a guy, and it has everywhere he's coached every year.
Yeah.
It does not for him. Armstrong last served as the defensive coordinator at Southern Miss for the 22 season.
Okay. I stand corrected. You were right. I don't know why I thought he was Alabama's linebacker coach. I guess that's
because they hired him away from Alabama.
Oh, so Alabama hired him from USM, and then they hired him from Alabama.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I got you now. Well, I mean,
and he was also a quality control coach at one time for Georgia with Kirby Smart.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyway, there you have that.
That was good to know. I'm glad you cleared that up.
All right, JC, we got some text here from the other day that just wanted to chime in on if you've changed your mind on anything that you thought about Brandon Miller.
Brandon Miller.
On the Titan Mar text line.
That is a toughie there, man.
Yeah, because Chris from Cottondale said he was disappointed. This is on the Titan Mar text line. Disappointed in JC in his defense of Alabama basketball situation involving Brandon Miller. So he's disappointed in you, JC. Whether that doesn't have, you don't have to change your mind, but I don't know if you changed your mind since you and I went at it the other day.
I'm just going to try to make it simple. I understand why the media's moral outrage is there. Michael Wilbon and all these people, literally being sick when he was playing against South Carolina and winning the game on his own. And they didn't like the look there. They don't like the response of Nate Oates. But Doug Gottlieb said something interesting. And Doug Gottlieb made sense to me. And what he said was, if Alabama had any doubt of this kid's innocence in a capital murder, they wouldn't have run him out there. It's just that simple. And until, Chris and wherever Cottonwood or anybody else, QB, can tell me why the DA hasn't charged him with a crime, then he's not charged with a crime. I mean, he's not arrested. He hasn't been arrested. And I know people don't like the reaction from the coach and that maybe he should have been suspended and this and that and the other, but we're not in that situation. We can only react based on what we hear, and what we've heard from that public hearing is why all of a sudden this has become a nationwide story, because the more information that came out, the more people were upset by it. But QB, answer this question. If this kid played at Nebraska and wasn't the projected first-round NBA draft pick, and this had happened in Lincoln, would anybody care?
I don't know if anybody would care, but I think people would still feel the same way.
They wouldn't care though.
Well, I don't know about that. When somebody gets killed,
Listen, I'm not making light of that. I know there was a murder, but he didn't pull the trigger. You say it's like him driving the getaway car, but then he would have been arrested for accessory to murder, and intent would have been shown. That did not happen. So the lawyer for him came out and wrote a letter about the situation. And I do get that, this is a bad look. There's no question. And it's a tragedy. There's no question about that. But, I don't understand why, kids these days are around guns. When I was in high school, I'm telling you, this is the truth. When I was in high school, there were people with shotguns in the back of their truck in the window on a rack. Right. Okay, nobody even thought about bringing a gun to school. It wasn't even in the thought process for anybody that I knew when I was in school back in the 80s. And today, it's just so crazy that I can't understand why kids would surround themselves in situations that could end their life or someone else's. I guess you could say, well, what about drunk driving, JC? Yeah, I know. But intent means you picked up the gun and you're going to go kill somebody with it.
Yeah, it's
but
crazy.
Brandon Miller wasn't found guilty of that. Now, was he? So
no, he wasn't. But it's still it's crazy. I mean, what concerns me more is not concerns me, but those I assume they don't live on campus, because maybe they do, maybe they don't. They probably don't.
The strip is right on campus, basically. It's not considered on campus. It is literally in the middle of it all, though. Yeah. I mean, the strip where that happened is literally by the football stadium, by sorority row, by the old fraternity row, and is within steps of the central part of the university campus. But again, I'm just going to maintain that if the University of Alabama, as an institution, had any doubt about this kid's innocence, they would not have run him out there. And they know about what happened a lot more than what the media knows. The media can only comment on what came out of that public hearing the other day.
Are you in the market to buy or sell your home? Doreen Weeby, a realtor with Caldwell Banker, Emily Parish, provide you fast, friendly, reliable service. Give her a call today at 352-562-1411 to help your dreams come true. Got a text here on the Titan Mark text line. It came in yesterday, and it's pretty long, but it says, it's from Bill, and he says, everyone is bailing on Billy Napier. He cannot coach. The Gators are in trouble. All right, Bill. Well, I appreciate you texting and listening to the show, Bill, but that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. They're not bailing to go to Central Michigan to coach. They're not bailing to go coach high school ball. They're going to the National Football League, the premier league where the greatest players in the world go play at their sports.
Yeah,
they are. That tells you that Billy Napier had good coaches, or had coaches that other people wanted. So, I mean, what you got anything to chime in on that, JC?
I can't.
I think it's nonsense.
Well, I can't listen. Okay, Bill is saying that these guys who were hired, they're not committed to Billy
Nobody.
Napier.
Okay. Let's hold that.
But
thought.
Just let me finish.
Wait, no. You finish your thought. I'm going to write something down so I can remember it. So I don't forget.
Okay, that they're only out there trying to find the next best job. They're not Gators that are committed to making this program number one. Kirby Smart, when he coached defense at Alabama, and they were the best defense in the history of football, he had multiple offers in multiple years, and he stayed at Alabama until he got the job he wanted. I think that's what Bill's saying.
Okay, well, Bill, I agree with that, but Kirby Smart is now coaching his alma mater. It's a different story. First of all, the days of loyalty or whatever, as I told you, the NIL has ruined college athletics, and the committed coaches are committed to their job. They're getting a paycheck, okay? Let me just explain it to people. If something better comes along for you, JC, if you're working for Merrill Lynch or Cornerstone Financial, and somebody in that industry comes and gives you a better offer or something that intrigues you, that doesn't mean you weren't committed to your previous job. You're taking something that's better for you, a stepping stone. So with these coaches, again, They're not going to Troy. They're not going to FAU. They are going to the National Football League, where you do not have to recruit. All you do is coach ball.
Mhm.
It's a no-brainer.
Mm.
And I think Bill is way
Well,
off base.
well, but okay, and I'm not disagreeing or agreeing. I see your point, absolutely do, and I can't argue with your example. But and that's true. But I'm just trying to decipher a little bit of what came out of Bill's text. So
Right, but if you have an engineering firm and you're very successful, but another engineering firm somewhere else gives you a better deal, or you want to change the scenery. This, like, again, they aren't leaving for the University of Florida to go to Ole Miss. To
it's not allowed
LSU.
I understand.
They are going to the National Football League.
So they don't see it as a lateral move for sure. That makes sense. Kimmy, let me make one point though. I want to go back for a second. I know you kind of want to get off the subject, and we will. But wasn't Tim Tebow Aaron Hernandez's roommate?
I don't know. I think it was just on road games. I don't think they lived together on campus or all campus. I think it was just
somebody at Alabama had asked me, they said, all these people feigning outrage about Brandon Miller and the company he keeps. Didn't the greatest quarterback in Florida football history room with a serial killer, basically? And I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I'm pretty sure, I'm positive about this, about 99%. He only roomed with him on road games. So let's say they played 3 years. They played 3 years together. They were in a room together, sleeping, and woke up the next day probably 18 times.
Okay, so I don't know this. I don't know the answer to the question. That's why I asked you. And I'm also not going to judge Tim Tebow because he was a roommate of a madman. I'm not going to judge him about that either. But sometimes you're just put in situations that are less than desirable. QB, I'm going to tell you, it's the gun issue is overwhelming right now, and murder is horrifying. But every single weekend, and this is not a political statement, this is the truth. Every single weekend in America's cities, especially in places like Chicago and Baltimore and Detroit, there is gun murder every single day and every single weekend. And this has got to be a subject for the next political election. I think they've got to do something about this.
I saw this tweet. I took a screenshot of it too, referring to the Florida coaches. It says, from this perspective, Florida's lost as many coaches to the NFL just this week as Miami has ever scored in the ACC championship game.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know, QB. Will Miami ever win the ACC championship with this coach? I mean, he's supposed to be their hope, their great hope.
No.
Well, the ACC, I don't know.
It's still going to be Clemson. I know Florida State had a great year, blah, blah, blah. It's still Clemson. Chris Storing Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville, North Central Florida. Call Chris Storing Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. Before we let JC go, we're going to get to Comfort Temp. This day in sports, which is brought to you by Comfort Temp. Comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise. Give Comfort Temp Heating and Air a call at 352-376-2366. This day in sports, JC, I know you're in 2013 at the 55th Daytona 500. Jimmy Johnson won his second Great American race, but Danica Patrick was the first female to start from the pole position, also the best ever finish by a woman at Daytona. She came in 8th. Has any other female been driving since Danica Patrick?
That I'm aware of, not that I'm aware of.
I don't think so.
Okay, so let me ask you this: who, just off the top of your head, can you tell me who just won the Daytona 500?
Oh God, isn't it Steenhouse?
Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Yeah.
I think the racing thing scared the hell out of me when that guy went upside down and burned, and then luckily survived. A quarter of a mile down the track, and it was an explosion. I just can't. I can't handle it. I know it's a fun thing. It's great, wonderful to go to. It's a big drinking event, big party. Man, I couldn't imagine sitting there for 6 hours watching cars. I just couldn't imagine that. I can't.
You got to be a different person. I know a lot of people that love it.
Have you ever been?
I went to a race when I was with the Panthers. I went to the Charlotte
600
Coca-Cola something.
Yeah.
And then I have been to Daytona once. I mean, it's okay. I mean, you just you gotta really like racing.
But you don't like crowds, QB. How did you get drawn into that?
I wasn't like the normal fan. I went with some
you
people they could get up in the box.
Access.
Then they had a special place on the infield. So yeah.
By the way, I am officially announcing, QB. I am a Jacksonville Jaguars season ticket holder. Yes, I am.
Dear Lord.
I am club level, baby, east side. We'll take
what is that? What is that? What are those costs?
So it's funny that the two sides of the stadium, since it goes east west for the seats. The west side is a lot more expensive than the east side, and
because it's probably shadier.
I don't want to. Well, that's exactly what it is. But the actual club level indoors is exactly the same and so forth. And they can look it up. It's not too bad. It's nothing like buying seats for the Dallas Cowboys or the LA Rams or the New York Jets because of seat licenses and things like that. There are no seat licenses you have to purchase. You just buy the package. It comes out to be roughly $200-300 a game, but it's okay. I mean, it's all about entertaining. It's all about going and having a good time.
So did they send you a nice little bumper sticker to put on your truck?
All that's coming. But I'm buying in, baby. I'm buying into Jags. I know.
Okay, so let me ask you this before we let you go.
Okay, I just want to tell you, they got the Chiefs, they got the 49ers, and they got the Bengals all rolling into Jacksonville. Think about it.
All right, so I have to know which player jersey are you going to purchase?
I don't know. I couldn't even tell you 3 guys that start on defense right now. But I know Devin White. I have to look at that. I'm not a jersey. You think I'm a jersey guy. The only jersey I own is hockey jerseys, QB. And I had a Todd Gurley jersey.
You have a Todd Gurley jersey.
I had a Todd Gurley jersey, but he's no longer playing. I never wear it. And I do have some hockey jerseys. That's it. Big deal. I mean, everybody owns a hockey jersey that goes to hockey games.
All right. Well, I don't, and we'll never. JC, have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.
Yep. Go Billy
JC, join us on the Tight Number Hotline. We're going to take a timeout, come back, and be joined by Seth Harp. You're watching and listening to Podup Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. All right.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peaceland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise.
Campus USA Credit Union.
QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wibby, Realtor Caldwell Banker, MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Aver and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Hi, Steve Spurrier here. Making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, a number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Pot up with Matthews in the morning, going to the bullpen. Seth Harp, Harp on Sports, harponsports.com. And also my battery mate, if you will, today, Zac Blobner, host of JNZ WDAE down in Tampa. I guess to be over and down in Tampa from here. Zac and I used to work together in Jacksonville. Zac's got his own show now down in Tampa, so I wanted to bring Zac in because I actually wanted to dive into some Buccaneer Gator stuff as the NFL draft is still a couple of months away. wanted to start off with this first with you, Zach. First, welcome in. Oh boy, the rumor of Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk rumors abound. We have Kyle Trask waiting in the wings, question mark. Tom Brady may be coming back, question mark. I'll let you start that party today for us here.
Yeah, I mean, the Tom Brady stuff, I feel like will just never go away until the season starts. And look, that's doing of his own work, right? Last offseason, 40 days and 40 nights, and he returned. We know that he, quote unquote, put paperwork in, but we also know in the NFL that doesn't really mean anything, right? You can send papers through and come back. It's interesting with Brady because I think he's one of the few types of players, not just quarterbacks in the NFL, but players in the entirety of sports that you would leave the light on for if you're most teams, right? So whether you're San Francisco, who obviously have Purdy's injury and Trey Lance to deal with, the Miami Dolphins with all the Tua concussion stuff, we know that they got in trouble for tampering with Brady last year and the year prior. And then the Bucs obviously are always going to, quote unquote, leave the light on, is what general manager Jason Light likes to phrase it as. But I think we learned last season, at least in Tampa Bay, you can leave the light on, but you got to start trying to figure out life without Brady. And if for whatever reason he calls you and he's like, I'm willing to come back, figure it out at that point. But in terms of planning and moving ahead and trying to kind of get your quarterback and your team situated, you really just can't bank on him coming back. And I was in the belief for the majority of this season, even all the way up until the end, that he was going to retire, that it was going to be his official goodbye swan song to the league and to football. And I think it's interesting because now he's in a position where, unsimilar to last year and last offseason, okay, he decides to return and he already said his goodbyes and all that. I think we can give him some grace with doing that once. But if he does it again, he's Brett Favre, right? And it's not in a good way. So I think if you're Tom Brady, you'd really have to consider what it would mean for your legacy. And that's something that really we thought in the past could be untarnished, right? He's built up such a resume, but now we're in a position where if he starts to be this guy that retires and unretires every year, I think that actually hurts his legacy, which is tough to do for the GOAT. So I think he stays retired, but the one thing I'll say about Florio with Pro Football Talk is we called him crazy last year with a lot of the stuff that ended up being true in terms of the Dolphins going after him. So you gotta put some stock in what he says when it comes to, the potential of what could happen with Brady in the future. And certainly the Bucs trying to figure out their future, and Kyle Trask should be a part of that.
Yeah, and you look around the league, right? And you have situations not in the same vein as Tampa with veteran quarterback, drafted young guy underneath. What do we do? Well, was it Malik Willis in Nashville, or at least Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill? Both of those disaster exit stage, right? You have a Desmond Ridder situation, right, in Atlanta. Marcus Mariota, who knows what's going to happen there. Trey Lance out in California and San Francisco behind a Jimmy Garoppolo now. Okay, question mark there. The difference in Tampa is the big guy is gone now for all intents and purposes, right? So now you have Kyle Trask, a quarterback that was drafted a couple years ago. Was it 3 years ago now? 2 years ago? 2 years ago now. That's sitting there waiting, but not the backup. I think, Zach, sometimes people forget that he's not been the backup. Blaine Gabbert's been the backup. So take us inside there a little bit. What's going on in Tampa with that quarterback room now that Brady is gone and Blaine Gabbert's been the backup for the last 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, and that aspect of it makes the conversation so polarizing, at least here in Tampa Bay, because a lot of Bucs fans bluntly say, well, Kyle Trask must suck if he couldn't be QB2, right? And we know life's complicated. Sports are complicated. It's not that cut and dry, that black and white, that like, oh, he's QB3, so he's not good. And so for me, I look at last year and the years before that situation with Gabbert being QB2, and I'm like, listen, Gabbert was with Bruce Arians in Arizona. He knows that system. Byron Leftwich took over for Bruce last year, but same idea. So Blaine really gets it. And he's a vet. So he's the type of quarterback that Brady could lean on the bench during games as he was trying to kind of dissect defenses live. And Gabbert was always going to be a better quarterback to do that with than Kyle Trask, who was a rookie and then second-year guy who never played in the league, who was learning a very complicated offensive system because Bruce Arians is one of the most complicated systems in the NFL. Like every receiver has like 8 tree branches per, play. So I think it wasn't so much that Trask wasn't beating out Gabbert for QB2. It was just that logically it made more sense for Brady to have Gabbert to lean on than Trask in live game scenarios. However, that's hard to tell fans and explain to people that just want to say, well, he was QB3, not 2. 2 is higher than 3. He must suck. All I know is Trask is the only one on the roster now. And I think when the Bucs drafted him out of Florida, the thought was, well, Brady's going to retire. He's not going to be here forever. And when that happens, we're going to be really hurt on the cap. We're not going to have a lot of money to work with. And with Brady on the team, we'll probably not be picking in the top 10 when that happens. All that's coming to fruition. The Bucs have a lot of money to pay up. They are picking 19th in the draft, so they're probably not going to get a top 4 quarterback even in the first round if they decide to go that route. So really, what do you have? You have Kyle Trask on the roster. And again, I think that was the thought process when you took him in the draft a couple of years ago. That being said, how has his development been? What's he looked like in training and in preseason and off-season stuff that they do over there at the Bucs training facility? And I think that's where it gets kind of mysterious. It gets kind of marred because publicly you've had Bruce Arians, Todd Bowles, now the head coach, Byron Leftwich, former OC, Dave Canales, new OC. You've had players in Levante David over Super Bowl week at Radio Row, Ryan Jensen, the center, all talk glowingly about Kyle Trask. So publicly, all we're hearing is that like they're comfortable with him being the starter week 1 and that they believe in him if that's what the case ends up being. And again, with everything in consideration, draft-wise and cap-wise, it seems like outside of adding a cheap vet that you won't have a lot of faith in anyways, Kyle Trask is the obvious choice. So that's where I'm at with Trask taking over. Blaine Gabbert, is a free agent as well now, but he was here because of the systems he knew that were in place. He doesn't know Dave Canales or Seattle, how they ran things, so it doesn't make sense to bring him back, in my opinion. But as you look ahead and you try to get through it all, and this is the one thing I bring in Gator fans for, we know when Trask was in Gainesville, he didn't really practice great, right? We knew him as a gamer. When he stepped up and kickoff started, he was a different quarterback than behind the scenes. So the problem is all the Bucs have to go off of at this point is his year at Florida and all of his practice and training. And it's like, well, let's be blunt. If all they have is that, he probably seems like a bad quarterback. Yeah. But Trask is the type of player. He is a gamer. He's going to get an opportunity at some point or another. There's no way around it in 2023. And we've seen in the past when it's sink or swim for Kyle Trask, he swims. I don't know if that'll be the case, Seth, this time around. But if history's any indicator, it should be.
He is Zac Blobner. I am Seth Harp. Zac, WDAE in Tampa, host of the J and Z show, joining us here on the Titan MRI hotline. Also, if you have any Facebook Live questions for us, fire away, courtesy of Meldon Law, the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. You talk about veteran quarterbacks, and there's always, the Josh Johnsons who are just placeholders, right? Yeah. You have guys out there. If you had to guess right now, and then we'll move on to a couple other things here. Do the Bucs draft a quarterback 4th or 5th round to put behind Trask, or do they bring in one of those veteran, I don't want to say lame ducks, but veteran placeholders just to create the illusion of competition?
Yeah, for sure. I think they're, regardless of drafting or not drafting a quarterback, they'll definitely bring in a cheap veteran. I mean, you think about, too, Dave Canales, the new offensive coordinator, worked with Geno Smith so well in Seattle last year. So they'll bring in a guy. I think the easy connection is Drew Lock, who was Geno's backup and competed with Geno in camp for that job, knows Canales' system and how he wants to do things from Seattle to Tampa Bay. But Drew Lock also isn't the sexiest name out of these cheap quarterbacks. I'd say a Gardner Minshew, a Baker Mayfield, even Jacoby Brissett, who won games with Cleveland, would all be quote-unquote better options in terms of guys ready to step in and maybe win some games. Not a lot, but some games for the Bucs. So I do think they'll add a cheap vet no matter how you slice it. But then it gets interesting because you got to round out a quarterback room. 2 guys isn't enough. Do you bring in a second cheap vet? Probably not, because you are strapped for cash. You probably are going to draft a QB, but whether that's in the 2nd round or 3rd round with like a Hendon Hooker, or way later in the draft with, a guy that basically mirrors what Brock Purdy was for San Fran this year, just in terms of draft, not really play. We won't know that, obviously. I think that's where it gets interesting. I'd love for the Bucs to draft a quarterback. I think it wouldn't hurt to have another youngster on the roster that you could maybe gamble on if Trask and the vet don't work out. But I don't know if they're going to go that route for QB3 or a second cheap vet. That's where it gets, I think, interesting for me with what they're going to do this offseason.
One more question on the Bucs before we pivot to a couple of Gator things here. Eric Bieniemy named the assistant head coach, offensive coordinator in Washington. When Byron Leftwich was fired, we're talking about new systems, new quarterbacks, all of those things in Tampa. Was Eric Bieniemy ever brought up, considered at all in Tampa?
I think officially, no. I was a big fan of him. I thought that the Bucs should have called him and really gave him a good look. It's so interesting because a lot of people believe that if Todd Bowles, has a season in a bad NFC South where he's not at least competing for the playoffs all the way till the end of the year, he's probably not going to make it into 2024. That being said, if you're Eric Bieniemy, you have to be successful wherever you go. We know he's in Washington now. Dave Canales is a first-time guy. Like, I don't know how much it's going to hurt him to have a hard year in his first outing as OC in Tampa Bay. So I think both for the guy taking the job and the job that's being taken on the other side, the Bucs in this case, it made more sense for them to go with a guy like Canales. I would have liked Bieniemy because I believe in what he does and his philosophy and what he had from KC. But I don't think the Bucs ever really considered him just because of the situation, right?
Yeah. A couple other things. And I want to ask you one more Tampa question before I get to the Gators. If you had to guess right now, baseball stadium, Tampa or St. Pete? Where's it end up? Or neither. A, B, or
yeah, I feel confident that there's still gonna be baseball in Tampa Bay for the future. My gut tells me Tampa, and I know all the talks about St. Pete right now with what's going on. They have a plan that's public, so. Just like Kyle Trask is the only quarterback in the roster, St. Pete's the only city with a stadium plan on the table. That being said, different than the Bucs situation, I know a lot of behind-the-scenes work here in the Tampa Bay area. I think it'll be interesting. Keep an eye in like April, really, in May heading into the summer. I think Tampa really starts to get involved a lot more. And if that's the case, if it's like an even playing field, the Rays, we know we're going to pick Tampa over St. Pete. And even I think most St. Pete people know that, like, yeah, if Tampa can compete with a stadium, it makes sense to go that way.
I know you're a Gator grad, you're a former Gator, so I want to do a couple Gator things here. First and foremost, talk a Gator baseball really quick. Start off taking out Charleston Southern, then get into a little one-on-one here midweek thing with USF, right? Beat them Tuesday, lose to them on Wednesday, and Kevin O'Sullivan doesn't go to his closer, right? And it's one of these things that, try to tell people here in midweek games in college baseball, when you play 65 of these suckers, going to your pen 4 times in 5 days with your closer or whatever, 4 out of 6 or whatever it is, for a game. And it's tough for people to wrap around this concept sometimes, but not every game is the same. You want to win. There's no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. But at some point, your starting rotation is one of those guys is going to get a sore arm. They're going to have to sit. You have to define what you have coming out of the bullpen. Starting catcher takes the night off because you don't want him catching 70 baseball games. So, and you cover the race for years now. It's a 162-game haul, and the starters don't start every night, right? Especially day-night type of situations. And that was a night-night situation. But I sit here and I'm fascinated that the mindset is, well, Florida, USF should beat them no matter what. And this is going to sound crazy, every game counts, Zach, but not every game matters.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off of what you said, baseball managers, including Sully there in Gainesville, are playing chess while we're playing checkers. We're watching as fans in one-game scenarios. Their mind is like, I got to think about this week, this month, this season. I'm already in Omaha trying to figure out how to get there. But as fans, we're prisoners in the moment. We watch the games in a one-time scenario, one-time capacity. So I think that's something you got to keep in mind for sure when it comes to how these managers handle their arms, both in late game scenarios and even starters, rotating them week in and day out. So that's part of it. I think the other part of it is USF isn't a slouch. Like, they're a good program. Obviously not on the level of Florida, even this season. But it wasn't too long ago that USF came into the regional and beat the Gators in their own house to move on, right? So, like, I think at some point you kind of got to give a little credit to the other squad, in this case USF, who honestly has proven that they belong to at least be in these types of games. Maybe you shouldn't expect to win more often than you lose, but in a one-off, like you said, yeah, I don't think Gator fans should be shocked. I don't think it's a negative for Florida. I do think that obviously USF's going to take more away from it in terms of getting that win, especially when we get to seeding way down the line. But if it's just about how you view it, right? For USF, they're like, we have to make a regional. For Florida, you're like, how can we best set ourselves up to make a deep run to Omaha and then hopefully win the whole thing? So I think perception on how you handle your day-to-day, week-to-week season stuff is a little different in both places. But I don't think Gator fans should be upset. USF's a good team. And, hey, in baseball, any sport, and back to Kyle Trask, sometimes you just got to take your licks. And last night, it was one of those situations.
And I look at it like this too. We look at, and I'm going to bring football into it for a second. The AFC Championship game, the Chiefs are playing the Bengals. In the fourth quarter, the Chiefs have their number 3, number 5, and number 6 wide receiver out there.
Yep.
Well, if you don't play those guys at some point during the year to get some experience, you're cooked in the AFC Championship game. You got to play guys. You got to figure out what they can do. And sometimes that's going to lead to a loss because you get them out there and they're not. How else are you supposed to get experience out there? And that's exactly. And when do you test this? You're not going to test this against LSU and Baton Rouge. You're not.
What is it like week 2 as well? Like the season just started. Let's breathe.
5-run lead at home or whatever it is. So there you go. I want to mention this too. Softball got 10 run last night. The one thing that it boggles my mind that you have schools that test themselves. My alma mater, Western Michigan, went to LSU and got skull drugged the first 3 games of the year, right? But they got to figure out, okay, we're going to get money out of it, A, and B, okay, we're going to challenge ourselves. That'll make the MAC competition seem a little bit, less stingy. Gator softball has beaten up on nothing but, cream puffs the first few weeks of the year. They go out to UCLA or go out to the West Coast, and they get 10 run to no hit last night. But that, Zach, again, is not necessarily a bad thing. Playing Bowling Green and UConn and Boston University and 10 running them, you're not learning anything. You're not learning anything. Zach, they learned something last night because that's the type of team they're going to play in Oklahoma, should they and if they get back. And they lost to them last year, just lost to them again last night. If you're going to win a national championship in softball, 10 running BU doesn't mean anything. Losing 10-0 to UCLA means everything.
Well, again, chestnut checkers, right, for the managers. So, like, fans love a 10-0 run if you're on one side of it. It doesn't matter who the other team is. But if you lose, it's like, what the hell just happened? Yeah. I think, and I know we're going to get to basketball here in a minute. I think back to, like, how Billy Donovan handled the roster in those games. He scheduled so many hard games for Gators hoops early in the season. Yeah. And that's something that's, like, happened even after with Mike White and now Todd Golden. And that's the way that hoops has approached their long season. And I think that kind of translates to the other sports too, in terms of having these big matchups early on that, ultimately you do want to win, but you're going to get experience either way. And it's invaluable, winning or losing the better matchups against the better teams, because that your end goal is to be in these tournaments and to try to play for a championship. Well, who are the teams you're going to be playing? The types of teams you're going to be playing. If you stack some of those early on in your year, it's, again, going to benefit you regardless of how the outcome ends up unfolding. So I think, again, whether it's baseball, softball, basketball, these are all important matchups to get under your belt. And you just hope that you can learn from adversity. And I think for coaches and managers, like, that's really where you get to start to figure out your team and who they are and what buttons you can push and not push. If you're not facing adversity and you're just beating up on cream puffs, you're not going to figure out who your team is or what players you can rely on in those moments. But if you're playing harder teams in competition and you're traveling across the country to some of these other spots, you will learn those things, and it'll help you inevitably, not just throughout the course of the season, but again, ultimate goal in the postseason. Zac
Blobner, WDAE in Tampa, the J and Z show hosting. We're going to get to what he's going to talk about coming up on the show today. You want to listen online. Also, we got a Facebook Live question for us. Fire away, courtesy of Meldon Law, the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators, and Podup with Matthews in the morning, a courtesy of QC Kinetics. If you have joint pain in your knees, shoulders, hip, or back that won't go away, check out QC Kinetics for long-lasting relief, not surgery, drugs, or downtime. Schedule your free consultation at QC Kinetics, locations in Ocala, now open in Gainesville as well. Okay. The other night, and it's one of these things when I saw it in the moment, I thought, oh my gosh, it's awful. Then I watched a replay of it. I'm like, all right. And then I watched John Calipari in the post game. It's like, okay, this is ridiculous. You have a situation, Kentucky and Florida, where, fans on the court, right, sitting there. And I don't know how old these guys were. I had to think that they're probably in their mid-20s. They didn't look really like college kids, but maybe they could afford those front row Nicholson seats. You have a situation where Kentucky players spill into the crowd and run into the fans, and then you have an arm hooking situation around Kentucky players, and there's outrage, and is it Jimmy Dykes TV? You have this whole, oh my gosh, they get those guys out of there, it's ridiculous. All right, look, there is nothing more annoying to me, right, than fans that go to games that think that people are there to watch them as fans. drives me nuts. Okay. And those guys had a little bit of that in them. But, if you want to move them away from there, that's fine. But there are 3 guys that are sitting there pointing, thinking somebody went out of bounds. Guys run into them. This wasn't fans running onto the court attacking these players. Could it have been handled a little bit differently? Yes. But Zach, looking back on that, I thought that was a moment, and I'm not a demanding of an apology thing, because I think there's a lot of ridiculousness that goes on with fans and their self-righteousness. But that was a moment that I thought nationally Florida got a little bit of a raw deal, and those 3 guys were made to be monsters when they really weren't. I thought that was ridiculous.
I mean, the play-by-play call was way over the top. Like, the same thing, I heard it and I was like, oh, that must have been really bad. Like watching it live, not really seeing specifically how it went down. But then you go back and you watch the replay and you're like, the audio doesn't match up with the visual here. And, I'll say this, and I've had this opinion for at least 2 or 3 years now. I think we're really close and getting closer by the day to no courtside seats at hoops games, whether that's NBA or college. I mean, honestly, even like the way that everything's set up here societally these days, I'm shocked it hasn't happened yet. That we still allow. I mean, you even go back to the Shannon Sharp incident, like a few weeks ago, but just crazy things happen when you're that close to the players. And I've always appreciated that aspect of basketball, that unlike the other sports, I guess in hockey you can get on the glass, but you have a giant glass wall in front of you. So you could do that. I don't think that's plausible. I think we're going to start to see fans move back. But to the incident you're referring to and everything, I agree. I thought it was a little bit of both, of like over the top. I don't think it was a situation where Florida fans should have been villainized. They've done more corny dances in the Rowdy Reptile section that I've had. I've been more ashamed of some of those than I have the incident with those fans. But that's part of what you get when you have guys out there. And then you have, again, just natural reaction plays a big role, right? Of a player running full speed at you and you're just trying to react. In the moment, those guys don't have time to think through what they're going to do or how they're going to do it. And that's part of the conundrum with having courtside seats in those incidents, is they happen so quick, so fast, that whatever is going to occur isn't something that's a thought out process. I think probably smart to get them out of that section at that point.
Yes, at that
just,
point,
just to be safe, right? But overall, that's part of what you sign up for, having courtside seats, whether you're NBA, college, high school, like I don't care, UAA, like whatever it is. That's part of what having fans that close to the action is going to bring you at different points. So I thought it was over the top. I think without that play-by-play call, the way it was done, we're never talking about that incident. No. So
you're right. I just hope, I don't know what University of Florida is going to do. I hope that they don't ban those guys or not. I mean, come on. I mean, if you don't want to let them sit courtside anymore, that's fine. But it's one of those things that I looked at and when I heard about it, I'm like, oh God, I want to see what these buffoons did. And then I saw it. Wait a second here. And then they slowed it down. I'm like, the more you slow it down, the more, I don't want to say innocent they become, but the less you watch it in real time and you see, I go, oh, what's going on there? Well, when he has his arm, I got to do this on camera here. When he's got his arm pointed, the guy runs into it like that, it's going to create a net. That's what, when you hit the inside of your elbow collapses. So.
And Seth, I'll say this too. The biggest takeaway I had from that whole incident is how far Kentucky and Florida has fallen in terms of that matchup. Like usually we're talking about like seeding, we're talking about how this affects their tournament, all those things. This time around, it's like, well, Florida's not making the tourney. Kentucky's having an awful year. Let's focus on this weird incident that happened on courtside with these fans where a player ran into him. Like, man, it's a bad look, I think, for the matchup and for both schools, just in terms of the basketball side of things more than anything.
Yeah, and what that game the other night was what? It was to secure Kentucky's spot on the bubble. And for Florida, can they finish above 500? A decade ago, you're talking about, could both of these teams be 1 seeds? And now that's where we are. You're right. Kentucky hasn't made a Final Four in 8 years now? 9 years now? And Florida hasn't made one in...
Don't bring it up. We don't talk about that.
Even a little bit longer. Zac Blobner, host of J&Z WDAE in Tampa. I am Seth Harp, Harp on Sports. Before we wrap this up, I know you have your own show down there. Doing it with Jay. He's a Lightning aficionado. Actually, he's a Long Islander, right? So no, just tell everybody. I mean, you're a Gator grad here. We got about 60 seconds. The host the show that you now host in Tampa.
Yeah, we're a younger edition of sports radio is kind of how Tampa Bay is pushed us into the limelight, taking over in October. In that lunchtime slot, we're on from 12 to 3, JAY and Z. You can find us on pretty much all social platforms, but we do a lot of Bucks, a lot of Lightning, a lot of Rays talk, obviously, a good amount of college too, led by USF, but we touch on Florida State, and Miami as well. And we have former Rays player Matt Joyce joining us on the program today around 12:30. Going to talk about his new role with Valley Sports on the TV side and the season upcoming in baseball. They're weird. They're starting their spring training at Disney, so they'll be at the Trop after that. But we do a lot of that, a lot of Bucks, and hopefully a lot of Kyle Trask talk this year as we look to see him take over.
Zach, thanks for hopping on with me today. I appreciate it.
Like riding a bike, Seth.
Yeah, I know. Just pick up right where we left off, man. Right where we left off. He's Zac Blobner. I am Seth Harp. Hope you enjoyed that.